Okay, Councillor, you can go ahead and start if you'd like.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Cultural Hub Task Force meeting. It has been a long time. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. I hope everyone's doing well. And we've got some updates tonight, which is the purpose of this meeting, because it has been so long since we've been together. Can I assume that roll call has been taken?
Yep, it's been taken.
Thank you. All right, because we're meeting online, we've got some rules of procedure that I have to go through. So I'd like to remind the task force and our viewing public of a few procedural rules for our virtual meetings in operating as efficiently as possible. All members will be muted for the meeting to reduce feedback. All web cameras for task force members shall be turned on to ensure to track quorum. So if you turn off your camera, you will be counted as being absent. Staff will be requested to join the video meeting should the need to answer questions of members arise. Any member of the task force should indicate they wish to speak by pressing the raise hand button on the participant list screen, which is in the bottom. It says bottom right side, but it's actually the bottom center. The participants, if you open that up, you'll be able to see a spot for raise hand. And the clerk staff will lower your hand once you've had the opportunity to speak. In the event a connection service interruption occurs that affects quorum of the task force, we may recess the meeting for up to 15 minutes to regain quorum. If quorum is not achieved, the meeting will be adjourned. Vern, can you mute, please? Thank you. Perfect. All members participating via online video conference will vote using a show of hands, and the chair will announce the voting results. Members of the public who registered as delegates are now able to take part electronically via webcam and via the telephone for the meetings. All rules for delegations under the city's procedural bylaw continue to apply. All right, so we'll start with declarations of conflict of interest. Is there any member that wishes to declare pecuniary interest at this time for anything on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will continue on. I don't see that we have any presentations or delegations. Item 4, there are no items of consideration on today's agenda. Consent items. We have 2 consent items on today's agenda. We'll start with 5.1, further information on next planning year progress proposals. And Sarah, I believe you are going to give us an updated report on this.
Sure, I can do that. So over the last year, as you see in the report, staff has been working behind the scenes on some projects. So we've received a formal proposal from Glenhurst Art Gallery, and that's included as an appendix to this staff report. That includes some asks from the city. So hopefully you've all read them, but if you have any questions specific to the report, let me know. I might have to look back at it. It's been a few weeks. In that time, we've also had staff meet as kind of like a preliminary pre-consultation to review the project itself. We don't have formal site plans to really review it in the formal way we normally would. So staff reviewed based on the information that we did have and provided some comments. So there are some staff on the line today from planning as well as legal if there are any questions about what's included in the report. So at the same time, we have also done a review of the legal documents. There's some information in the report and attachments, including the agreement between the Cockshutt Estate and the Corporation of the City of Brantford. So back in 1956, when that land was gifted to the City of Brantford with specific conditions on it. And a speech made by William Ashton Cockshutt, who was one of the individuals representing that estate. He was one of the trustees, and he made a speech in 1956. So the actual notes that were received from the Canadian Industrial Heritage Centre are included as an appendix as well. While we were going through this process with Glenhurst, we also received an expression of interest from Wilfrid Laurier University. So as you all know, they're doing significant renovations at the One Market building in downtown Brantford, and they do have the possibility of having a space that may meet our needs. So their expression of interest is not very detailed. If the task force wishes, they can always make a motion to ask for more details so that you're comparing apples to apples when you're looking at Glenhurst and Laurier. But what we have from them is in front of you. Neither Glenhurst nor Laurier were able to join the meeting today, so I can do my best to answer questions based on what I know from conversations with them, but we may need to get some more formal responses from them, and staff can help with that. So I'm here with 2 hats today as a task force voting member, but also as staff liaison to this committee. So I'll wear both hats if clerks is okay with that, but please correct me if I'm not following the process correctly.
No, you are a voting member, and again, this is a bit of an odd body, given that staff sit on the task force, but also are voting members. So yeah, please continue to do what you're doing. You're doing great.
And we won't be offended by the odd body comment there, Melanie. We are unique and we embrace it, so it's all good. Thank you, Sarah, for that update. So what this consent item is report 2020-540 regarding further information on next planning year progress and proposals received. The ones that are received be received by us. So I need a mover and a seconder to get this on the floor. Councillor Wall. And I need a seconder, Lorna, thank you. And do we have any discussion? This is where we would use the put your hands up with the participants box, and it'll show me in order. So I've got Councillor Wall first.
Awesome. Thank you for playing double duty here, Sarah. I really appreciate it. Super duper stoked to hear that we have 2 people who are interested in helping make a cultural hub space like this come together. So here's my question, a couple of questions. First question, is it possible for us to entertain the idea of both? I mean, you can never have too many cultural hub spaces. And I think that if Laurier wants to do something and Glenhurst wants to do something, is it feasible to consider both?
Through the chair, that's always possible. At this point, council has given this task force and staff direction to investigate Glenhurst only. So if you wish, we could investigate both.
Okay, then my second is not necessarily a question. I can make a comment. Yeah, Chair Antosky?
Yes, go ahead, Councillor.
So I love the idea of Glenhurst. That's why I supported it when it came to us at council. But I do think that what Laurier is doing with One Market is an incredible thing. And I also think that we should support and want to be a part of that. And I'm just wondering, only because that facility is already built and there are already theater spaces in there from the former theaters, and there's a potential, is it feasible to, I guess I can ask a question here. Could it be feasible that that was a temporary solution until we moved forward with a permanent solution at Glenhurst, or even acted as a, kind of similar to my first question, as a satellite site of the cultural hub? I just think having 2 really interested parties, is there a way to even connect Laurier and Glenhurst and for us all to work together? I'm just so excited on everything I just heard. My mind is just racing. So that's it. That's all my stuff. This is really cool. Thank you. And if you can
Councillor, Councillor, can I get clarification, because I think we may need this when we get further on in the meeting. Are you suggesting looking at the possibility of using both facilities at the same time, or investigating both as its own possibility?
Okay, so it's threefold, I think. First is, could we work with Laurier at the One Market site in the now? They're a lot closer to being able to provide some sort of cultural space while we perhaps work towards what's happening at Glenhurst. And then second would be, could we use them both, one as kind of like a satellite location of the other, with Glenhurst being the main cultural hub? And then third, is it feasible potentially to use them both permanently? So first being Laurier, then Glenhurst. Second being, yeah, okay. I think you guys
got it. Thank you, Councillor, for the clarification. Next, I have Councillor Celes.
Thank you, Cheryl. I guess through you to Sarah. Sarah, was there any detail at all with the Laurier discussion? Like, is this something they're going to move forward with regardless of what we do? Do they need this for their own need?
Through the chair, I can do my best to answer that one. What we really know is what we have on paper right now. We do have discussions with Laurier on an ongoing basis about that potential facility. They've discussed the possibility of having mixed use spaces, so spaces for both students and the public, so that it goes back to kind of like the former mall it used to be. So a busy space with lots of movement that's open to the public, but also serves students. They've suggested that there's the possibility of having restaurant or a small cafe or diner space within this facility so that people who are in there can use all of the services and stay for longer. So that's the extent of what we know right now. What we can definitely do if we receive council direction is investigate further and ask Laurier to provide more elaborate details on what they're proposing.
Are they looking for city dollars?
Through the chair, they haven't specified.
Okay. It's when I read the background, it looked like there's a lot of obstacles been thrown up with Glenhurst. Are any of those insurmountable?
Through the chair, I think this question is better suited for Joe and or Heidi from both a planning and a legal perspective.
Go ahead, Heidi.
Thank you. Through the chair, Heidi Debris, City Solicitor. So I usually like to preface things with, when it comes to legal issues, they're not always insurmountable, but there are certain risks associated with considerations like the terms set out in the Glenhurst deed. So depending on which direction council would choose to go in following a recommendation from this task force, what would most likely be required in this instance, because these lands were provided to the city subject to certain terms and conditions, would be a fulsome legal opinion on what the legal impediments might be, potential solutions to those impediments if there are some, and there may be some, and then other consequences should we move forward. So that would be in a closed session meeting of council, most likely before any final decision would be made. I think that there are restrictions with the use of the property that are set out in the deed, as most of the committee members are aware, if not all. And those are just a few of the impediments: the restrictive covenants, the terms of the deed itself, and the general idea that the property was to be preserved for a garden, and the development of the property was also restricted to certain items like a cultural space and a center for the arts again. But there are other, I think, development constraints that Mr. Muto could speak to more accurately in terms of, your engineering, your planning, protection of trees and those types of things, which I've learned not to speak to because I'm not a planner.
If I could just question you before we go to Joe, Heidi, if that's okay, Madam Chair. I think the spirit and the intent would be met, would it not, with pulling a cultural hub in there? Like, it's not like we're putting a McDonald's in or a Tim Hortons in or trying to build condominiums. I think we're doing something that's in the same spirit as what was intended for the use of the property. So it's not like we're coming from left field and saying, well, let's see if a baseball diamond works with maybe 400 capacity seating. We're not looking for that. We're looking to really enhance what was initially there.
So through the chair, it is really interesting discussion. I'm not going to get into the, the legal requirements of the city when it inherited the lands, or was deeded these lands. But certainly further to your comments, Councillor Celes, when you read these instruments, both the speech and the deed, there's a balancing of interests. But I think it could be argued that the balance of interest is in favor of preservation, and development is to be fairly restrictive. And it really, at the end of the day, would depend on the plans. So it really does depend on what Glenhurst would be proposing in conjunction with the city, where the development would take place. If that's the extension of an existing building, then perhaps it would be permissible. But if you're talking about a building separately on the property, using up garden space, including paving over the lower gardens, which were specifically set out to be preserved as gardens for the benefit of the public, that may be another story. So it really depends on the extent of the development of the lands and what is being preserved, including the trees and the other horticultural items or areas of interest on the property. And when it comes to specifically, like I said, the development of that lower portion, which may at this point be underutilized, but was specifically gifted for the purposes of developing gardens, actually maybe when you read that deed, it actually sounds like they may have something in mind, like what Councillor Antosky does elsewhere in the city, a community garden. It's very interesting. I guess they were well ahead of their time. But again, it really depends on the plans. So like I said, it's not a hard no, but there are some legal considerations that council should be aware of before investing in a lot of the other studies that may be required, like feasibility studies, archaeology, engineering, because those could be costs that would then be thrown away in the event it could not move forward.
And just one other, if I could, Heidi. I remember hearing or reading that there's one of the guardians or trustees, I'm not sure exactly what they're legally referred to, of the initial agreement is still around and can still administer that influence to say yes or no. Am I dreaming this, or is this all true?
So through the chair, I'm not aware of who's still around. I certainly haven't been in contact with anyone who was an original trustee of the estate. But that really would get into the legal opinion, whether or not the covenants on title are still valid, whether or not there's another type of arrangement that has been constituted because of the way the city has held the property for so long. I mean, we're going to get into some pretty significant legal discussions, and that would all be contained in a more fulsome legal opinion for council.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Joe, tell me why we can't do it.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. To the chair, to Councillor Celes. I think we've had some discussions on this in the past, and what it really boils down to through the chair is that this is a very challenging site because of the locational attributes associated with it, not to mention all of the legal matters that Mr. Vries just explained to you, but the need and the requirement for certain studies will be required depending on the level of development being proposed. So, and that development will constitute whatever building goes on there. We'll look at, as Mr. Vries said, the cutting of trees. So you'll be looking at, arborist reports, tree preservation reports, engineering reports such as geotechnical, as well as servicing reports, stormwater reports, and a planning rationale depending on the level of development that is being proposed. There's other items that would constitute, depending once again on the size of this performance space. How big is this parking area, and what will use accommodate? So there's probably the need for a transportation impacts study or analysis as well. So those are just a few of some of the technical studies that may or may not be required. Without vetting it through a bit more formal concept plan, staff, I've not seen anything recently in the way of a concept plan. I know for the most part it's probably in its infancy, but that's something that from the development planning side of things, what we'd want to look at and then analyze in terms of what those fees and applications that will be needed in order to facilitate development on this site, if even feasible.
Okay, thanks, Joe. If I can just elaborate, then I appreciate your comments, Joe. Madam Chair, to me, because it's hard doesn't mean that it's wrong. There's a lot to do there, and I get that. It's not cheap, I get that. If it was easy, everybody'd be building these things, and they're not. So there's a reason for that, I guess, because it's hard. I think Laurier is a very easy out, but I don't think it's the best out, my opinion. I would much rather go down this road as far as we can possibly go without getting immersed in a pile of debt, to see just what we could do before we say no, if in fact we do say no. But I don't think we should just say, well, okay, well, there's a whole lot of obstacles, we may as well look in another direction. I don't think that's appropriate either. I think we should look as deep into this as we can until we get into where the lifting gets heavy and you're starting to commit a lot of dollars. But I think there's a long way we can go down this road prior to getting to that, to make sure that we're on pretty solid ground, and that yes, we could move forward given we have to do a number of things. That's why I asked if Laurier, they use the Sanderson Center quite a bit. Did they not, Glenn?
Through the chair, currently they're only using it for their convocation ceremonies as well as their orientation week activities.
Okay, that's all they've been using it for in the past?
In the past, we were also their largest lecture hall space, but their capacity with their own buildings has caught up and they no longer need us for that.
Okay, but it seemed to me that they would want, or part of their building out their university campus is to have this on it. So I would tend to think that they're probably going to move ahead irregardless. To me, that's the easy way out. Glenhurst, I realize I think we just heard from two, and now the mayor he'll be the third one to tell us all the problems we're going to have with Glenhurst possibly. But I think it's worth going down as far as we can go without getting into a lot of spending. To me, it's the ideal place. To me, it just makes so much sense to go there. And I also think there would be a real appetite to fundraise in this city for something like that at Glenhurst. You know, I can just see the Ferrero Center for the Performing Arts or the Vacano Center for the Performing Arts. To me, it's very real. And I think Glenhurst as an entity has the capacity to do that type of fundraising to make this thing work. So I guess that's my nickel's worth, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Celes, and thank you for your boldness on that. Welcome, Mayor Davis. Next, I have Councillor Martin. No, I have, sorry, Martin Smith. I saw Martin up there. Sorry.
Well, you just got demoted.
Through the chair, I'm not quite sure who this question would be for, but I've heard rumors on the street, because you know that's what I'm all about, is a conversation of a cultural hub, not by that name, at the current site of the casino, and as well the Mohawk Lakes. And I'm not really sure what Mohawk Lakes means. I'm sure it's not on top of the water. But have these things actually come to the city or not? I'm not quite sure, but I hear these stories. Thank you.
Through the chair, I can respond to that. So there are two separate projects. One of them led by the Canadian Industrial Heritage Centre, I believe you're referring to, in partnership with the Brant Theatre Workshops. So that project, they're projecting an outdoor amphitheatre space. So that would not meet the needs of what this cultural hub task force has identified. It's a smaller space, kind of an alternative to what happens at the Bell Homestead during the Bell Summer Theatre Festival, or like a Shakespeare in the Park type of facility. The second is a project led by a member of the community. That member of the community has reached out to us to tell us about the idea, but at the time when they reached out to us, they had not spoken to the casino, and we have not received an update. The only information we have from the casino, it was what was published in the Expositor, and the Expositor had quoted the casino representative as saying that they had no future plans to move.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, I have Lorna.
I think legal wanted to chime in.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Heidi. Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Celes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair, just to expand on Ms. Monroe's answer, there is actually another group the Brantford Symphony Orchestra, who provided responded to an expression of interest for the Mohawk Lake District lands, the cultural district area that was set out in a report that planning staff drafted and was recently received by council. And so I can tell you that real estate and legal are on as basically a bit of a sub-staff committee to review the expressions of interest, and the community groups who provided those to a separate task force. And we are engaged with the Brantford Symphony Orchestra in discussions. They are looking for more than just a performing space, but that is a discussion that's ongoing right now with respect to those lands in the Mohawk Lake District area, just to expand on that answer.
Could I just follow up with a quick question? Could you help me define what the Mohawk Lakes District is? I mean, I know where Mohawk Park is and I know where the body of water is, but I'm not sure what we mean by Mohawk Lakes.
Through the chair, Mr. Muto will be able to give you the exact parameters with street names. Again, I'm going to avoid the planning part there, but I can tell you the area that we're discussing are the remediated brownfield areas. So I think that's 347 Greenwich Street and 66 Mohawk Street. The Canadian Industrial Heritage Center that Ms. Monroe identified is going to be located on 66 Greenwich, and they were just given permission through a 2-acre lease by council to locate there. And then the rest of the lands are those remediated brownfield lands in the Greenwich Mohawk area. But the district itself extends all the way up in the area of the Woodland Cultural Center, in the Mohawk Lake area. It's quite a large district, and there's an overall planning separate area plan for that particular area. It's actually really fascinating. If anyone wants to look it up, it's great work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heidi. Yes, it is an awesome plan. Okay, sorry about that, folks. Okay, Lorna, you're on.
Okay, a lot of my questions I had when I first put my hand up have been answered. So that's good. I'm wanting to agree with Councillor Celes in terms of, I think we should really push further with the Glenhurst ideas and so on, flesh them out a little more so that you can be more specific in answering questions and seeing where issues are or are not. I think we want to create a really exciting place for people to be drawn to, a destination place. You know, I can see people fighting over the place for having weddings and so on, because it'll be so amazing. And to do something that relates to the river, I think is critical. During this pandemic, my husband and I have often been, wanting to go for a drive. We want to sit somewhere where we can overlook some water. Where do you do it in Brantford? We've gone to Woodstock, Waterford, down to the lake, Pinehurst. There's really no place in our own city when we have this amazing river to be able to take advantage of it. And this would be doing partially that. I think it would be good to get a little more information from Laurier as to how much would be used for their own students, how much have they considered for community group use, not just the general public, but a big part of the Glenhurst thing is all these various theater groups and choirs and so on, and whether they'd be able to perform there. Has Laurier thought of that aspect of it? Would it be, if the school use comes first and other public use, is there any space or time left for community groups? And would it be accessible in terms of costs and that kind of thing? I think Councillor Wall's idea of, might it be a stopgap thing until we can get Glenhurst or some such thing moving forward, is an interesting idea. And also there's the aspect of the cultural hub isn't answering all the needs of the community groups in terms of like rehearsal space and storage for costumes and that kind of thing too. So it'd be interesting to hear from Laurier, but I would also like to pursue some of these issues that are seen as possible obstacles for Glenhurst, be pursued a little further so we'll know a little more specifically what we're talking about. one of the things I noticed as a question mark was about the Grand River Conservation Authority. And I had understood that it wasn't a problem with them. So I don't know whether Sarah has an update on that or not.
Through the chair, I think that is a message again for Joe Muto, and Mayor Davis is waving his hand.
Thank you. You're on mute, Mayor.
Yeah. Can I speak now? Apologize for coming late. I had another meeting that I was at that I left a bit early. So, you know, I hate to be the damp rag here, but, you know, I've got a responsibility to the taxpayer, right? And certainly that means seeing monies used wisely and well. And so this began with a desire to have a mid-sized performance facility, and it's kind of morphing into something more than that, and leading directly to the concerns many of us had, who we'll call ourselves the fiscal moderates, that we're getting pulled into spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for something that may not likely be feasible. And so I've got some huge concerns as a lawyer about the original deed, the original will. I don't know how you get around it. Maintaining in perpetuity, especially talking about the lower lands, as a garden and place of peace, quietness, and beauty for the benefits of the citizens of Brantford. And specifically talked about not having commercial facilities in there. And no matter how you cut it, this is a commercial building that would be intended to be constructed. So I don't know how you get around the will. But put that aside for a minute. And to me, it seems to me that there are some real logistical problems with that location, with the road. The road would have to be entirely rebuilt. It'll change the entire ambiance of the Glenhurst Garden property to something that many of us cherish, and that is the peace and quiet and the tranquility of it. And it'll turn into something much different than I think was originally contemplated. And I don't even know if you know, with the archaeological issues, with floodplain, with trees down there, that it's even feasible to consider doing this, given all the constraints. I understand it's a lovely concept, but you know, is it really practical when you consider, you know, all the things that one has to address when one constructs a building in lands like this? I realize that it's hard to accept that there are such realities, but they're there. And so whenever there's a project like this that has so many question marks around it, the last thing you do is run off and spend $500,000 to construct architectural drawings. What you do is, and I've said this repeatedly from the very beginning, it needs a feasibility study to really rationally and objectively determine these obstacles. Are they real obstacles? Are they able to be overcome? And looking at it by, as I said, in a very objective manner, recognizing we are stewards of the taxpayers' money. But at the same time, wanting a desire to have something for mid-sized performance facilities. So, you know, in a feasibility study done properly, that's a good $100,000 at least. So that to me is, if there is a serious desire to look at this further, it's got to go beyond wishful thinking. And it has to go beyond look at these objections and concerns and just saying, well, you know, I don't think that they're a concern. You can't deal with a project like that on that basis. You got to have the experts look at it and determine, are they insurmountable or not? And not based on the opinions of me or anyone else that, you know, frankly, we don't have the ultimate expertise to figure it all out. So, as I said, before we embark on a process that could well lead to a lot of waste of taxpayers' money, I think that's a rational first step, if it's considered to be a really desirable option. And I think there is a sentiment that, gee, if we could do it, it'd be great. I'm just concerned we may not be able to do it. And then, of course, there is the competing vision offered to us by Laurier, you know, which has a lot of merit to it in terms of expanding, you know, our downtown, making our downtown a more vital place where arts plays a very large role. So sorry I'm putting out the dissent on it, but you know, someone's got to say it. And I guess I'm the one's going to say it. So, so if you do a feasibility study, where do you get that money from? And I know when I talked to Anne about this about a year ago, I said, why don't you approach the province or the feds to see if they'd be prepared to fund such a, something like that. Anyways, those are my comments, and I'm sorry to be so practical, but that's just who I am. So.
Thank you, Mayor. Lorna, were you, and Vern, sorry, are you wanting to get in the queue? I've got a couple ahead of you in the queue. Can you put your hand up in the participants box? Lorna, were you finished? Sorry, thank you. Okay, Glenn, I've got next.
Thank you. I need to start by saying that having taken a bit of a deep dive into the Glenhurst project, I think it could be an incredible legacy project for the city, but I don't know how practical it is. And so I am concerned about any major forward motion on it at this time. But I did want to think in terms of the Laurier initial interest, I'm wondering if there's a role for us to take a look back at the feasibility study and look at some of the ways that they were assessing different sites, the value of different sites. And I'm thinking in terms of things like, if you are in a downtown location, how that can create some economic benefit for the local businesses, for restaurants and other support services that are already in the downtown, where this can increase pedestrian activity in the evenings, and kind of achieve a lot of other objectives as well as being a performance space. And I'm wondering if we need to maybe revisit the feasibility study and take a look through that lens at both of these projects to really kind of assess where our efforts should go.
Thanks, Glenn. I don't see your hand up, Vern, but did you still want to speak? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Got it. Sorry. Yes, I remember starting when we started looking at this whole situation about the mid-sized theater. Yeah, we're pretty excited about trying to get something going in the city beyond the Sanderson Center, something that our local groups can actually work at. And then I read the report that was sent out with the minutes with the package for this meeting. And after reading through a number of those letters, I became a little hesitant. I'm trying to be practical. I do really, really want us to have something that we can work with in terms of the arts. But looking at the letters and the attachments to the meeting agenda for tonight, I became a little concerned. They're very, as Kevin mentioned, they're very heavily docked in legalese, I guess, the best way to put it. I'm not sure that's the route we really wanted to go down. We definitely wanted to have something for the arts in our city to do beyond the Sanderson Center. And in as much as I really enjoy Glenhurst, I think it's a beautiful spot. I try thinking of some of those same things as was mentioned earlier, entrance, exits from Glenhurst, and the possibility of maybe even an archaeological study that was mentioned somewhere. And I really had some doubt about whether it's the perfect spot. Well, sorry, it could be the perfect spot if the funding was available and readily and easily to achieve. But I really think we really have to take a really deep second thought about the Glenhurst situation. I read a bit about the Laurier stuff, and in as much as they would like to come and speak and talk about stuff, it is still the local groups. I wonder how much leeway they'll have in going into the Laurier center setting and set up shop and be able to use hardware for their place, lighting, electricity, that kind of stuff. So at least we have an alternative for the time being on the table, which is Laurier. I don't think we should stop looking. Now, Glenhurst may not be feasible, but I don't think we should stop looking. We need to continue. We have a growing cultural center in the city of Brantford, and we need to showcase it.
Okay, thank you, Vern. I have Councillor Celes again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the feasibility study that we've already received, was Glenhurst contemplated at all in that study? Or was that just in general terms? You'll have to help me remember, because my capacity for remembering things is diminishing. So I don't remember exactly what was in that. It's been a while since we dealt with it.
Through the chair, the feasibility study
Are you
stated.
familiar, Sarah?
Yes, through the chair, the feasibility study stated that the next steps were to find a lead operator. Right at the end of that feasibility study, Glenhurst came forward. So the recommendation was to look further into Glenhurst. Glenhurst was the only lead operator to submit any kind of expression of interest during this process.
Okay. I guess, Madam Chair, I understand what Kevin's saying, and it makes total sense. And I'm not going to try and argue that he's wrong, because he's not wrong. He's right. The problem I have is we always, as a city, are prepared to accept the mediocre. And that's why you don't see signature things happen. Because the easy way is to just say, okay, let Laurier do it, and we're done. Let's everybody go home. But I agree. It's going to take a few bucks to move forward. Hopefully not $100,000, but if there's, I wish Glenhurst was here, because I think they have opportunities that, as a city, we don't have as far as accessing funding. That it's a shame that Anna's not here, because I think she could answer some of the questions that I would have, and I'm sure others would as well. I would hate to abandon it because it just looks so hard to do. I guess that's where I'm coming from, and you know, maybe I'm seeing it all through rose-colored glasses, but it would be so nice to do something that like the Gretzky Center. That's a good example of taking something on, and when we were done with it, everybody went, wow. Or we could have built a Quonset building and had 4 ice surfaces in it. We could have done it either way. And for the marquee that building is, and the traffic that goes through there from out of town as well as in town, it's a heck of an investment, even though it went over budget and it cost a zillion dollars and all the rest of it. It's a signature thing in the city, and the city's known for it. Go through the hockey circles or go through the swimming circles, it's known for it. We're known for that facility. And I was just hoping that somehow through this process, we could come up with something similar, that we go, geez, if you want to see someplace that's really cool, go to Brantford, because that's incredible what they did there. You can sit and you can have a sandwich, you can see the river. It's just, to me, it just had all the components of something that was a wow project. Funding, yeah, it's going to be an issue, but I think there's real opportunity for sponsorship and fundraising and all the rest of it. And through Glenhurst, accessing provincial and federal funds. And Kevin mentioned that Anna was going to, I think, look at some of that, and maybe she's got answers. And I haven't heard them, so I don't know. But I'd like to think that there's money out there from somewhere other than the taxpayer's pocket that could start to move this forward to see if in reality it could be done. But I would hate to just throw my hands up at the beginning of the process.
Mayor,
sorry, but maybe I'm just too optimistic.
Sorry, Mayor, did you want to respond to Councillor Celes? I've got a couple other people in the queue. Sorry, Mayor, you're muted.
I like what he's saying. I like a lot what he's saying.
It's a great concept, no question. It's a beautiful concept. But, you know, there are 2 showstoppers here. One is the will, and we don't have a definitive legal opinion. I mean, you can't be dismissive of that will. That's how the city got that land. And I know we're all thinking, well, you know, that was like 100 years ago, and what do we care what Cockshut wanted? Well, it's a legal document, and it could be a potential showstopper. But the other one that I'm really super concerned about is the archaeological. We know that the Y spent, what was it, $8 million because they got into a huge archaeological. And once you get into multi-millions of dollars in archaeological study, that's a showstopper. And a feasibility study, as I said, would try and determine whether or not there is a very serious archaeological risk here. And that's why I keep coming back to feasibility study. So.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor, while I've got you in the queue, I'm just going to take a turn if I can. I meant to do it before Councillor Celes is my first turn, because I have a few questions as well, some which have arisen from some of the other comments. I guess my first one is for Joe. When we talk about all the technical reports and things, don't we have to do most of those on any green build? Like, it's not specific to the site. I know there may be some that are specific to this site, but there may be others that are specific to any site.
To the chair, that is correct. I mean, the same types of technical studies are not always required. A lot are based on the locational attributes, as I said earlier. And because of the proximity of Glenhurst to the river, there's a number of other reports that will need to be contemplated. I can throw out a couple of examples, like perhaps an environmental impact study, a study related to geotechnical because of the soils and whatever will be proposed in terms of a building and how those lands will sit. Any other studies that may or may not be required by the Grand River Conservation Authority as well, given its location by the river. So those are some of those studies, but in depending on, once again, the development itself and the size of the development. I know we're saying it's a small performance space, but you have to account for the overall gross floor area of the building and the overall impacts of where the parking goes and the pathways and the proximity of where this will go in relation to the rivers is all contemplated and needs to be looked at through a more formal concept plan or pre-consultation.
Okay, and following up on what the mayor was saying about an archaeological test or study, does that comes in levels, does it not? So you could go into a first level that determines whether or not you have to go deeper, whether you have to go deeper, for instance, and the first one is much less expensive than the deeper one. So you could decide at that point. Am I right on that or not?
Through the chair or to the chair, yes, that's correct. There's varying stages, as stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, 4, and 5. Those all, as you get higher into those categories, it all comes down to the amount or level of artifacts found, the types of artifacts found. Then there's the idea of leaving those artifacts in place, or then removing the artifacts and preserving them in a different location. Those all have varying degrees of costs associated with them, but yes, you can on the periphery just do a stage 1 archaeological to assess the what is at that ground level, or I guess what they do is they kind of call the first level of topsoil to see what they find. But one of the key things here is the location of the river. And from an archaeological perspective, I'm not an archaeologist, but one of the parameters that the ministry stipulates is when you're within a certain distance from the river that you'll have to do these types of archaeological assessments.
Okay, thanks, Joe. And we'll have to check back with Anne on this, but I believe that Glenhurst was willing to do the stage 1, but we will double check with her on that. And if the task force wanted to, if we got to that point, we could go at that and make a decision after that. But as the mayor says, at that point, if you decide to not go further because something's been found and you know that it's going to be a lot more expensive after that, then that money is gone. So we'd have to consider that. I think my next questions are for probably Heidi. Councillor Celes asked one of the questions that I asked in terms of any of the members that were named in the estate, the deed, if they were still alive. But I was unclear in terms of, so let's say Councillor Celes is right and there is someone out there. What if any, effect or ability do they have to speak on that? So I'm thinking about, you know, Cockshut's envisioned this property in that day. Maybe if you were looking at it in today's, they would say, this does suit what, in today's age, this suits what we were looking for. And I'm just throwing something out there, but does somebody on that's still alive have any say on that?
So to you, Madam Chair, again, it's difficult for me to answer these questions. We do have a fulsome legal opinion prepared for council, but in a live forum with this task force, I'm not capable of disclosing everything, but I can tell you that that will most likely be moot. So the ability of a trustee or a relative of a trustee to alter the terms of the deed or the trust is actually, I think, what council may find is irrelevant to what we determine may be a legal impediment to moving forward on this site. So I can say that you know, there are significant amount of development impediments, but once council receives our opinion, council would have to make a decision whether or not they're willing to take the steps necessary to deal with the deed itself and other issues arising from the manner in which the property is held and has been cared for over the last number of decades.
Okay, and so, you know, we talked about the extent to which it's determined, right? That it's built, developed. Who decides, who determines the extent, where the extent fits and where it doesn't fit?
So to you, hopefully not a court, because essentially what you have, maybe I'll be perhaps a little more frank the way the mayor was, but the city was gifted a property on very specific terms, and to try to find wiggle room within those terms. Like I said, there may be legal ways around, over, or through those terms, but I think the ultimate question for this task force and for council is, should you find ways around, over, and through those terms, right? You hold this property for the benefit of the public. The deed is very clear about the preservation interests. And in fact, if you look at the speech given on the dedication to the city, the very last paragraph speaks to Mr. Cockshut's interest in the preservation and beautification of the city through parks, and was very interested in supporting the Parks Department. I think at the time it was called something quite different. And so Mr. Muto alluded to this, and it's been raised at this meeting already, but and I believe the mayor may have said that too. It's not simply the development of the lower areas, which were to be preserved as gardens, but it's the expansion of the roadway within this property, which would then eat into the area that's currently preserved as gardens and grounds for artwork. You need fire access and larger routes for that purpose. Two-way traffic, most likely. Again, now I'm getting into planning issues. I know our development engineering group is not on this task force, but has presented before. And the development is not simply about, you know, perhaps a cantilevered building that will be beautiful overlooking the river. It's all of the other ancillary infrastructure that comes along with that could be quite invasive and really disruptive to what were supposed to be gardens that were to be preserved as a peaceful, quiet place for residents of Brantford to enjoy nature. If you read those documents, both the speech and the deed together, and notwithstanding potential issues related to restrictive covenants, to trusts, and to you know, real estate transactions like this. Sorry, it's less of a transaction, it was a gift.
Thank you, Heidi. I'll wrap my comments with saying, I'm not ready to walk away from it yet. I do understand that, but I don't think we're also at a spot where we have to spend a lot of money yet. For instance, we're talking about, you know, we may have a conversation and it may be determined that we say the deed is a showstopper, not it may be a showstopper. That's not going to cost us a lot of money to get to. If we get to an absolute showstopper, then, you know, there's a decision there. But I think that in my personal opinion, I think that we need to keep Glenhurst at the table. But I'm also interested in hearing from Laurier. I'm not super excited so far about what I see from Laurier, only because we don't have enough information. I'll remind the task force that we're no longer mandated on just a performance theater. It was through the consultants, the 2 phases of the consultant work that we had, it was determined that the city needed more than just a performance space. And that's why we morphed into a cultural hub, that there is a greater need. And so I would want to hear from Laurier, okay, you've got 3 theaters. Is one going to be turned into a performance theater? Is one going to, help some of our other, visual arts or music or any of those things? What is the whole plan? How many seats? And really, is this just a Laurier build, and where do we come in on that place, which would be great for the city because there'd be no capital costs and there would lots of benefits there, right? But again, do we fall into the exact same spot we are, where our groups are trying to book and they're getting second bookings, and does it meet our mandate at all? So I'm looking to keep Glenhurst at the table. I would like to hear more about what can be done, and I know it's our staff's job to tell us where the hurdles are, and that's good. We need to know them. But I think we also need to know how insurmountable they are before we can make a decision on it. And while we keep Glenhurst there, I would like to get more information from Laurier, so that we're making decisions on 2 groups with similar levels of information anyways. Councillor Wall.
All right, great. I literally have to go to the ward meeting in 2 minutes, so I'm not going to do what I was going to say, but I'm going to make a suggestion. Question, that's okay. Question to the staff was, is this time sensitive? Do we have to make a decision tonight? And if we don't have to make a decision tonight, I would make a recommendation to this committee to defer this, to have Glenhurst and Laurier both attend the next meeting before we make a decision. And I have to go. So maybe another member could potentially move it, but is this time sensitive, Sarah? Do we have to decide tonight?
Through the chair, we are at a standstill right now without further direction from council. So that really depends on council's opinion. What we do have to have in the future, if you would like us to look more into Glenhurst, is the direction from council to direct various staff to come back with a budget for what it will cost to go through that. Ultimately, if we wait now, we haven't met since February as a task force. You can certainly do that. I think it would just depend on what those 2 representatives would be able to say as non-members to the task force, and the structure of how they can report to the committee.
Thank you, Sarah. You guys have a great night. I'm sorry I have to run.
Thank you. By Councillor Wall. Councillor Celes, you changed your mind?
Well, it's just, I think Josh had a good idea there, that it would be good to have the 2 groups at least get a presentation from both groups, just to see what, I'm sure there's a lot of things we don't know. And the 2 groups could enlighten us from their both, the different perspectives. So if you're looking for a motion to do that.
So your motion to defer, Councillor Celes?
Well, I'd say, no, I'd say given staff direction that they convene another meeting, and at that meeting we have both of those 2 parties here at the meeting to make a presentation on how they see themselves being involved in this process,
Okay,
what they could add.
Sorry, I need to get a seconder before we go. Is there a seconder for that? Okay, Martin.
Sorry, Councillor Antosky, if I may just intervene just for a suggestion. So the motion that's currently on the floor is just to receive the report. It's not to do anything else. So we could pass that motion to receive the report, and then you could pass another motion. And Councillor Antosky, I believe this was sent to you in an email, just asking for the task force to come back with direction to or to call another meeting with further information from Laurier. Something to that effect. I'll turn over to Sarah for exactly what they would need to ask from Laurier, but the motion on the floor currently is just to receive. So you could go ahead and do that without deferring anything.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further discussion before we take the vote on that then, folks?
Well, kind of a point of order, Madam Chair.
Sure, you can.
So do we have, is the motion to receive on the floor then?
Yes.
So what we're dealing with then is an amendment to that. Is that the idea?
Well, I think we are receiving the report first, and I believe.
Okay, so we don't have Councillor Celes' suggestion on the floor yet then.
Correct. I went out of order to begin with. So,
Okay.
All right. So any further discussion on receiving this report or questions on the report itself? All right, I will call the vote, and this we can do just by a show of hands to receive the report. All right, that looks like it's unanimous. All right, so now we can move. Oh, so Sarah, you've got your hand up?
It's to speak to Councillor Celes's motion.
Okay, can we assume then we still have the motion from Councillor Celes and seconded
Yeah,
by?
I don't really have a motion on the floor, Madam Chair, and it wasn't seconded or anything. It was a suggestion that I was making that perhaps that would be a road to go down. But if it's not on the floor, we can have a discussion, can we not? Or has it got to be on the floor? I guess it should be on the floor.
I think I have to put it on the floor first.
Okay.
And Mayor, you wanted to weigh in? Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, well.
Yeah, I guess you got to rule whether you got a motion on the floor or not.
Well, I do have a motion on the floor. We've got Councillor Celes that moved to convene another meeting with more information from the two entities, and we've got Martin that seconded that. Do we have any discussion on that? Sarah has something to say about it, and then Mayor, you'll be next.
So as a task force member, my only concern with the motion that's on the floor right now is that you're going to get Glenhurst here presenting a very fulsome report, and then you're going to get Laurier with just a 2-page expression of interests and reciting that. So I'm not sure how beneficial that might be to defer to another meeting to get them to present content that they might not necessarily have. What I might recommend, if I can do that, is that we potentially make a motion as a committee to ask council to bring staff back in to ask Laurier then to provide a more fulsome report so that you're comparing apples to apples before you spend any money at all. That's definitely a possibility because one, the Glenhurst report is great as it is, and it's a wonderful idea. What you have in front of you from Laurier isn't very inspiring because they haven't had the opportunity to spend the same amount of time as Glenhurst. That's a possibility. So as a committee member, I would like to compare apples to apples versus putting them at two very different levels of preparedness.
Okay, so I think what we would have to do, and I'll go to you, Mayor, is we'll have to, in order to get to that, Sarah, we'd have to defeat the motion that we have on the floor, but let's see what Mayor has to say as well.
Well, so I've got a question for Sarah. Are you so sure that Laurier would, if we asked them to come and present to us, that they would just simply give us the 2-page letter? Or?
Through the chair, no, I don't necessarily think that that's it, but they haven't had the same months and months worth of time to prepare. I think if they were given some kind of formal recommendation from council that there might be some interest in investigating further, just like staff have difficulty here in the municipal structure in investing a lot of time and effort into a project that really isn't going to go anywhere. We need council direction. I would assume that the structure of Laurier would be similar. So having a formal council recommendation to look further into Laurier, I think might get you a larger report. The last conversations we had with Laurier were similar to the expression of interest, and there wasn't a lot of detail because it was still just an idea. But I don't know if you've had further discussion with them since.
Okay, so I might need some help here, Melanie. So just for clarification, Sarah, are you suggesting kind of where I was going when we were debriefing on this meeting in terms of the resolution, having that resolution that comes to the committee and to be looking at both entities at an equal basis?
Through the chair, if we can reach out to Laurier and expect them to do substantial work to prepare for this meeting, that's fine. I don't know about the structure of Laurier or how they're allocating staff time, especially during a pandemic, if there's layoffs or redeployments there. So if anybody has further information that might give a better understanding of where Laurier is at on the project level above and beyond the expression of interest, that would be, I think, helpful and help to determine which route to go.
Councillor Celes?
Me? Yep. No,
Yes, Councillor Celes.
Okay, thank you. I would presume that Laurier has a vision for what they must be envisioning something, or they wouldn't have expressed interest in it. So I would think that maybe they might not be as formal in the process as what Glenhurst is, but I think we could get a much better understanding of what they foresee the future being for themselves. And I think that's what's important, at least for me. I would like to know if they want to be the community groups in there constantly, and like how integral is that project for them presenting their programs. I don't know, but they would know that. They must have a need for it, or why would they even bother doing it? So, but I don't know how great that need is. But they would have a better sense, I think, than what we do, because I have no idea what they're doing. But I think they could certainly enlighten us.
Melanie, can you refresh what we've got on the floor right now, please?
Yeah, actually, I was just trying to find a place to jump in. If I could make a recommendation, just procedurally based on what the discussion we're having here is, there currently is a motion on the floor from Councillor Celes to convene another meeting with further information from both parties. I believe that's what I got the general gist of it. If we wanted to vote on that and either pass or defeat it, however, there is, Councillor Toski, in the email I sent before, if you look at clause C that's drafted there, I do have a bit of an amended wording that I can put up and show the group to kind of, I think, maybe make sure that we have direction to do a more fulsome report from Laurier. I can put that up but if you wanted to vote on this current motion that was moved by Councillor Celes first, again, you probably want to defeat it if you want to pursue a more specific motion. I'm just getting a little bit lost with the.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So is it cleaner for us to do that than to make this an amendment? Because really, it's both the same thing, right? We're trying to have another meeting, but what we're talking about, Melanie, is really specifying what we need at that meeting. So if you wanted to share what was on the screen, it may only be an amendment to Councillor Celes's motion. Am I okay? I'm okay with that?
It might be just a little bit cleaner, just because it is the motion I'm going to put up is a little bit different. If you wanted to defeat this, we can go from there, just to make sure we're all clean on what we're passing and approving. Maybe. Okay,
so just for a recap, everyone, just because I like to make things unbelievably complicated. So we've got a motion to really have a different meeting with more information, but what we're suggesting is we do have a draft motion written that has some general information in it and some spaces for us to put other spots into. And so if we defeated the motion that was on the floor, we could move into something more detailed and take a look at that, or we could pass what's on the floor. It's just very it's not as specific in nature. So is everybody clear on that? All right, we will take the vote on Councillor Celes's motion, which is to have another meeting with more information from the two parties, Glenhurst and Laurier. So all in favor of that? We've got the mayor and Councillor Celes. All right, and so that will be defeated. All right, Melanie.
This is a rigged election. I don't know.
I tried to help you, Councillor Celes.
It's really kind of the same thing, but we'll get some more
all fake news.
Information. Thank you, Melanie. If you're going to share your screen. All right, this was I don't know if Sarah or Melanie, if you want to jump in on this. This was just something that we were discussing when I had the agenda review with Sarah, And I had some concerns that we just didn't have the information that we were looking for from Laurier, that I suggested this would be something I would be asking for, and thought that maybe the task force might also be interested in as well.
I believe Sarah has her hand up, Councillor.
Oh, thank you. I can't see everybody right now. Thank you. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you. So if you can see from this, it's very similar to what Councillor Celes was recommending. So in this form, we could bring a report from the task force to council. You have formal backup from City Council asking for more information from Laurier. Either way, you'll be getting the same information. The difference might be that it will be written information that will be public record and visible by everyone who isn't able to attend the meeting well in advance and afterward, so that you can compare one proposal against the other before really having to choose one or the other. So in this, you'll see sections 1 through 4. Obviously, with any kind of recommendation, the task force can always add or delete. So if there are questions where you really need more information from Laurier to better understand what they're proposing, then this is the opportunity to amend this and add it here so that it is on record and they have this to refer back to when preparing their response.
Thank you. I see Glenn's hand up, please.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if it would make sense to amend this to add an additional clause, just to ask for what they envision as the community access to the space. I think that's a concern when we're dealing with this group, because there is a lot of academic use for the space as well.
All right, can I have a seconder on that amendment? Lorna, thank you. Any discussion on that amendment?
Sorry, just prior to us continuing here, another procedural point. Can we move the, again, sorry, I should have done this before I typed Glenn's amendment. Can we move the motion then as was there previously and second that, and then we can move and second Glenn's amendment? Does that make sense? Sorry.
No, sorry.
So are we working as if this was what Councillor Celes, because we did defeat his original motion. So now I just showed this. I didn't know if someone had actually moved it. I might have missed it while I was typing.
No, I'm sorry. You want this on the floor. Sorry, that's my fault, Melanie. So to get this on the floor, can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Vern and Lorna. Sorry, bear with me. I've got like a whole bunch of screens up on my one screen. All right, so that's moved. We have an amendment on the floor by Glenn. Now I need a seconder for that amendment. Did we get that already? Sorry, Lorna, thank you. And any discussion? Okay, then we will take the vote on that. All in favor of that amendment?
Madam Chair, I'm in the queue here. My hand has been raised.
Sorry, Councillor Celes. I've got too many pop-ups on my screen. Go ahead, Councillor.
Okay. Also, I was going to suggest is that this meeting is going to have to wait a while. Like, that's a significant ask of Laurier. They've now got to get our feasibility study. They've got to make themselves familiar with that, and then see how this aligns what they're doing. If it aligns with what our feasibility study says that we're doing, that's time consuming. Then we're asking them to give a preliminary budget. I think they've got a concept. I don't know how they monetize that, but I think we're asking for a lot of detail that I don't think they'll be able to present, because they're saying, yeah, we're probably going to build one of those, so maybe we should work with you. And now we're asking for detailed information. And I think that's a ways down the road for these folks, because they're very conceptual. They're saying, yes, that's something that we're going to do in the future, and maybe we could work together. And now we're asking specific, detailed questions of that vision that they have, that maybe they'll turn those seats into a theater place. The movie theater will then turn into a performance theater. And at somewhere down the road, they're going to do that. And they're saying, well, if the city's looking at that, then we could probably use the synergy off that and proceed. But to have a budget for it, and then to take that budget and break it down further and say, how much would the city be liable for in that budget? Those are, how many chairs are we going to have in there? Like, that's really getting into the weeds. And I don't think I could be wrong, but I don't think they're anywhere near this level. They're just looking at what they have in the Eaton Center, and they're going, you know what? You could probably put a performance center in there. There's already seating in that. That's probably, I would think, from what I read, that's where they're at. So
Thank you.
I don't know. We can pass this, but I wouldn't expect them to be back here in a couple of weeks with all these answers, because it's going to take them a while. There's a lot of work there to do.
Thank you, Councillor Celes. I know that the conversations from Laurier have been going on for a long, long time before we got that letter, but Sarah, go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor Celes, Laurier has reviewed the feasibility study and all documents related to that. So they do have that document. But it is a very good point that asking them for even a preliminary budget might not be the best idea. They might not be there yet. But I think what we wanted to see as a task force is, how are they expecting the city to be involved? And the nature of that involvement in general, as well as the potential financial ask. So that wording might need to change in that specific clause, but I understand the concern there.
So we could either we could remove that clause, we could look for an amendment of that clause, and sorry, we'll probably need it up again, Melanie. Does anyone have any suggestions? Mayor?
Yeah, so I would agree with Councillor Celes that, so I meet monthly with Heidi Northwood, and I know they definitely have, they want to use the cinemas and use them in a similar format, not for movies, but as a performing arts, performing space for their students and their programs. So I agree with Councillor Celes. I don't think they're so far along they could give us a budget, but I suspect they could tell us, what their vision is for community access, how it might align with recommendations of feasibility study. Certainly they can tell us about the complementary services. They've given that some thought for the entire building. I'm not sure about number one, but in any event, so with the concerns expressed by Councillor Celes, which I agree with, I'm going to move an amendment, and the amendment is that we strike 4, subparagraph 4, and leave the other 1, 2, 3, and 5. 5 would become 4.
And do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Celes? Okay, so we will remove that. Any discussion on, sorry, we may remove that. Any discussion on that? All right, all in favor of removing that? It looks like that's unanimous. Thank you. Any other amendments?
What about a timeline, Madam Chair?
Yeah, Sarah, do you have any insight in terms of what would be a reasonable timeline?
So through the chair to Councillor Celes, it took Glenhurst about 4 months to create their formal proposal. That included getting the letters of intent and the expression of interest from other community groups. So, I mean,
and the budget, it included their budget as well, which we've taken off the plan for here.
Yeah, so I think it would be a feasible request to say by the end of Q1 2021, but Mayor Davis might have better insight given that he does communicate with Heidi regularly.
Yeah, and so my conversations on this have really been conceptual, but knowing how universities operate, a little slower than you might think. I think Q2 would be, they could certainly, I'd be surprised if they could not give us kind of a detailed conceptual concept of what they have in mind, by the second quarter.
Okay, so,
Because I know their
So-
focus right now, they kind of got the second floor all figured out, and they are focusing on that third floor, what they're going to do with it. So
does someone want to make a motion in terms of timing for the end of Q1?
That's so moved, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we've got moved by Councillor Celes, seconded by Sarah. Any discussion on that?
Sorry,
Sorry, go
I
ahead,
think-
Sarah.
I think Mayor Davis referenced Q2.
Yeah.
And you said in the motion Q1. So
Oh,
that's just,
because I was saying I was saying the end of.
yeah.
Q1.
I'll
Okay, yeah.
second Q2.
Q2, anytime in Q2? Okay.
well, I think I would think May 1st. It gives them kind of 4 months, similar to what
Okay.
Glenhurst had. So I mean, either they can produce something that'll give us some of the detail within 4 months, or I guess that tells us maybe they
Right.
can't.
Get us to a closer,
So
a closer match in terms of what we're making a decision on. All right. All right, so with no discussion on that, we'll take the vote. All in favor of the timeline being Q2? So all in favor, that's unanimous. Can I make an amendment? Do I have to give the chair over to somebody? Melanie? I don't even know who we do that in this task force.
Why don't you maybe say the amendment you'd like to move, and then maybe someone will move it. If not, we
Okay,
can
well, I
definitely
would
leave the
like-
chair. You're muted, Councillor, sorry.
I'd like to hear it first.
Sorry, this, I'm just looking for it on my paperwork here. Sorry, can you pull it up again? Melanie, can you pull it up again?
Yep, sorry, I'm just adding the end of
Sorry.
quarter to 1 second.
Yeah. It was the third bullet point, I believe. Okay, so we've got alignment with recommendations in the feasibility study for a mid-sized performance space in Brantford. I want that to read for a cultural hub. However, Sarah, is the feasibility, we may have to change the entire wording on this, because is the feasibility study only referred to the mid-sized performance theater and then it was changed after to the cultural hub?
So that's the name of the document, feasibility study for mid-sized performance space.
So maybe it has to be another bullet point that I'd be looking for, alignment with recommendations for a cultural hub. If someone is interested in moving that. Oh, Councillor Celes. Is there a seconder? And Martin, thank you. Is there any discussion on that amendment?
Yeah, I'd like to see it written out. I moved it to get it on the floor for you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Just speaking to that amendment, it's just we did evolve into the need for a cultural hub. So I would be interested in Laurier speaking to the other pieces other than just the performance theater. Councillor Celes?
Well, is that not covered in bullet 2?
I believe that the proposed complementary services to enhance cultural hub, it could be, but that could also be, see, when I think of the complementary services, I'm not necessarily thinking of the complementary programming like visual arts or dance. I'm thinking of maybe the restaurant or whatever, little sales shop for the art or something like that. Maybe other people don't see it the same way as I do. Are there any further comments on that? Is that confusing to other people as well? Like, does that muddy it for other people? No, okay, okay, so is there further discussion on that? Okay, we will take the vote. All in favor of what we've got written there? That looks unanimous. Okay, where are we here? I think, so Melanie, do we want to look at the suggested motion as a whole?
Yeah, if we could talk about the motion as amended, that would be your next step there.
Okay, thank you. Oh, for the vote on it. So I'm actually talking, okay. We need to see the whole motion that we were working on. Okay, but that's a section of it, right? Like that's section C of the motion.
This was the motion that we had put on the floor originally.
Okay.
So just to kind of recap what we've done, we had our original motion, which was to receive Sarah's report. And then we did have, which was carried. And then we had Councillor Celes's motion, which was defeated. And now we are here at this motion, which has gone through, I think we've had five amendments. And so now we are, if there are no other amendments, we are at the item as amended for this is what the entire motion would be.
All right. Okay, and then I'll have a question after that. All right, so with no further discussion, let's have a vote on, oh, sorry, Martin, go ahead.
Is it the end of Q2 or is it in May? I kind of heard both. I believe the mayor mentioned May, which is it's not the end of Q2, is it?
Yeah, we had said Q2, not end of, but if we want to say May, because the mayor had said May, we can switch that. Thank you, Martin. Thanks, Melanie. All right, I'm looking again. Oh, Sarah's got her hand up. Go ahead, Sarah.
Sorry, again, there's a typo in 2, proposed complementary services to enhance a cultural hub.
Thank you. All right, okay, I think we're ready for the vote on this. All in favor as amended? Okay, we've got everybody there. Thank you. All right, so Melanie, where are we going next then? I'm looking at, I was looking at that as part of a motion. Are we looking at the whole potential resolution or motion?
I'm going to defer that to Sarah because again, I'm not sure what else would be needed here from that list. So Sarah, if you'd like to provide, this dealt with, from what I understand, the Laurier issue, but Sarah, if you wanted to clarify what's needed for Glenhurst.
Sure, I can do that. So the last motion made to council was that this committee investigate the feasibility of Glenhurst as the lead operator. So if this committee is interested in investigating Laurier at the same time, then there's a very minor amendment that could be made in a new motion. I believe that's B in front of you, Councillor Antosky.
It is, yes.
So that's a possibility that just kind of, it gives staff the backup to be looking at both in tandem rather than contradicting the first motion that tells us only to look at Glenhurst. So that's a possibility. And another possibility is if you do want to know how much it will cost to get preliminary studies done to have a better understanding of what it might take to get Glenhurst to an area where you might be ready for actual architectural drawings, then this committee could also consider that and make a recommendation to council to direct staff to get some costing out for those. That's not necessary. You can do that at your next meeting after you've received information from Laurier.
Thank you, Sarah, for the clarification on that. Councillor Celes.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think all we've done here so far is we've told Laurier we'd like what we just asked for there, correct? And we'd like it by the end of May. So I think that doesn't mean we're having a meeting then. It means that they will be ready to present by the end of May. They will have asked themselves all the questions and answered them what we're asking for. So what I would think the logical step would be is in June, we invite both groups. We have, no, I can't even say the name. Glenhurst and Laurier come and make their presentations. Then from that, hopefully we would be persuaded one way or the other to, if we're looking for more information on one as opposed to the other, then go from there. But until you've heard them both, as was indicated, getting an apple-to-apple comparison, I think we need them both there so that one can give. I don't know what Anna's done since the last time. I haven't seen her in about a year, I don't think. So I don't know. She might have funding sources that I'm not aware of now. There's a lot of things that I don't know that she could very well have done. But I think we need her there to get the up to the minute perspective from her end, and the same from Laurier, and then we have something to compare to. Once we've done that, then we can decide how to move forward, knowing everything that we need to know. But I would wait as far as looking to see financial things to see how far we want to go down the road of Glenhurst. We might not want to even go down there once we've heard both presentations. So I would wait till we've heard those. So to me, the resolution should be to invite both groups here sometime in June and set up another meeting where they both come and present.
Okay, and so we will be looking at that, but what Sarah was mentioning is a simple add-on change to the resolution as it exists, just to say, and Wilfrid Laurier University as potential project. Yeah. So we're just adding that, and then yes, Councillor, I think that makes sense to put a timeline for another meeting. I've got Rick in the queue. Go ahead, Rick.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just apologize. Hi, everybody. I'm new to this, so you may have this information, and I don't have this background information. But would there? These are invitations to specific entities to participate in this. Has there been a general invitation for other proposals? And if, I mean, I can think of a couple in my own mind, that a couple locations that might work. So I'm not sure how focused this has been on Glenhurst only, and now we're opening it up to Laurier because they raised their hand, or was there a sort of an invitation to multiple opportunities, or even the city to look at existing locations as potential? I'm sorry, there's a background question. I don't have that in my own mind.
And Sarah may be able to answer more fully. Sorry, one moment, Councillor Celes. So Glenhurst was the only one to come forward after we'd done the feasibility study, and we realized that really having an operator was going to be the biggest challenge. So there have been multiple groups involved in this whole process, knowing that we were looking for a facilitator plus the capital needs that we would need further on. But the first look was really, you know, who's going to run this thing. Sarah, do you have anything to add to that? All right, Councillor Celes.
No, you just said what I was wanting to say.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's good.
Okay, so what we are looking for then is to add Wilfrid Laurier University as a potential project lead to the resolution. And I guess we've got to do that first, right? Before I start adding on Councillor Celes's suggestion about the meeting in June. Melanie?
Sorry, I'm just trying to follow the conversation here. So you're
in our the resolution that I have here, the draft wording on B, it says at the very end of the sentence, we're adding on Wilfrid Laurier University as potential project leads. So originally it had only said Glenhurst. So this, I guess this is what I'm asking. Can we get this whole thing that we had talked about as a potential motion? Can we get the entire document up?
So, okay, so sorry. I think, and again, maybe Sarah could jump in here, please, just to kind of clarify here. Go ahead, Sarah, sorry.
Sure, I'll get that. I know I have the draft. So you wouldn't want the one about financial because Councillor Celes mentioned that that's probably not necessary, but it might be used at the next meeting. But you'll want to have A, to receive the report, B, to amend the recommendation of the task force to include investigating 2 lead operators. So I believe that's B in front of you, Mel. And then C is the one specifically focused on Laurier. And then you don't need D. Yeah, so that's the one we're referencing right now. So this motion in front of you now is the exact same as the one that went to council back when we were directed to look at only Glenhurst. So this slightly amended motion gives staff the ability to look at both Glenhurst and Laurier without contradicting the first motion to only look at Glenhurst.
Yeah, and so I think that's quite simple. Everybody's clear on that. Oh, sorry, Mayor, you had your hand up. And sorry, so do you, Glenn. I'll go to you next, Glenn.
Yeah. So I just want to clarify. So task forces have to operate within the mandate given to them by council. So is the intent here that we're going to recommend to council that they expand the terms of reference for this task force to include this? Like, I don't know if we, the task force, have the ability to kind of expand it on our own. You see what I'm getting at? So I'm wondering if this shouldn't read that we recommend to the council or corporation city of Brantford that the mandate of the task force be expanded to, blah, blah, blah. Then it'll come to council and, the next cycle and, get approved. And then I think that solves the quandary that staff have, which is they can only act on the direction provided to them by council. And task forces is so long as they're operating within their mandate. So.
Yeah, I think that would solve the problem because, as Sarah said, the direction was to investigate Glenhurst, and we're asking for the expansion to look at the second one. So I think so. You're suggesting we change the wording to ask council to expand the mandate to allow for the investigation of a second possible lead.
Yes, it's not changing the intent. It's just following the proper protocol to make sure it's that we have the necessary authority from council to do this.
Yeah, I think that's fine. That doesn't change the intent, just helps process. All
Sorry,
right.
Mayor Davis, can I just get you to repeat that one more time? I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you throw that back up, I'll give it to you. So. I would say so. It's that the task force recommends to council so it should be that the task force should just get rid of it to investigate a mid-sized performance. Okay. So it should read that the task force recommends to council that to the council, right? Put to council. And then after the word council, that the mandate of the task force be expanded to continue to investigate, blah, blah, blah. Or be amended, that's fine. Yeah, I think that does it. And then council would just simply approve this, assuming it's acceptable, and then where do we go? We've got the expanded mandate.
Thank you for that, Mayor. Are there any further comments on this? All right, we'll call the vote on this. All in favor of this change?
Sorry, we just didn't get a mover and a seconder. I do apologize.
Oh, sorry, Melanie. I
I'll
thought we
move it.
got that
I'll move
already. I got the mayor and Vern. Sorry, I thought we got those. Sorry. I'm here to confuse you, Mel. This is hour 8 on Zoom.
No, that's okay. I'm getting a great workout.
Okay, my goodness. I think have we exhausted that? Sarah, we're done on that item. Anything that you want to add on that?
We just have to do the vote really quick.
we
I'm
do the vote.
sorry.
The all in favor part.
Sorry, I think you're muted, Councillor.
Bear with me. I've had it there. I'm getting like system pop-ups on my screen that I'm losing everybody. So sorry about that. So I could not see the vote. I called the vote. Was it unanimous? Thank you. Thank you. I can see everyone now. My goodness, Mayor. Sorry, is my space bar must not be working consistently. Mayor, go ahead.
No, I just want to make sure my vote was recorded.
Thank you. My goodness, I think my computer's getting tired too. All right, I think we've got that. Back to my agenda here. Okay, minutes. I need a mover and a seconder. Are there any errors or omissions on the minutes? Mover Vern, seconder Glenn. In no discussion. Okay, all in favor? That's everybody. Thank you. All right. Where are we here? Bear with me. I think we've got no resolutions. My goodness, I'm just making sure I'm not missing anything here. We've got no notices of motions. So I think we're at the end with nobody with their hands up with something urgent to add. I think that we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for persevering through that. Sorry for making it more complicated than it needed to be, but I appreciate everybody's input and helping move this, and we'll move to next steps. And I know it's taking a long time, but I'd rather that we get the information that we need to make good decisions. So